Friends, as I mentioned, I'm currently teaching and residing at St. Augustine Seminary in Scarborough. And so for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I was at a parish in Scarborough. So my hope is that none of you were there, because my homily now will be very, very similar to what I gave. So, but don't worry, it was good then, and it will hopefully even be better today. But really the themes, for Christmas continue through the whole week, and especially today as we celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. And what I mentioned on Christmas was, I was speaking of this, the image of Bethlehem, and not just the image really, the city of Bethlehem, which is so central to Christmas. And today we have, again, more cities in the Holy Land, Jerusalem and Nazareth. And so what I was speaking about was, during my studies, I spent a number of years in Rome studying. I also had the opportunity to spend 6 months in Israel. I was studying at a university in Jerusalem and living at a residence for priests. And so one day something intriguing happened. We were sitting at lunch, and one of the other priests got up and just sort of excused himself and said, I have to go to Bethlehem now, just excuse me. And it intrigued me because he just said it so casually, in the same way that any of us here would say, I don't know, I have to go to Markham this afternoon, I have to go to Toronto, something like that. And I experienced that actually. I was there for 6 months, and so I just got used to things. I went to Bethlehem a few times, and I took the city bus. So I just walked down, went to the bus stop, waited for I think it was the number 31 bus, got on, paid my fare. And then when we got to Bethlehem, I rang the bell and got off the bus. And I say it was intriguing because for me, and for probably all of us here, Bethlehem is almost this mythical, very special place that was so much a part of my faith and our prayers and our Christmas hymns and so on, that to then experience it as, a real, almost just regular city was fascinating. And that's what it is. Bethlehem, even now, it's a city. People live there, they work there, they go to school there, much like they would in any other city. And this was also the case 2,000 years ago. Bethlehem was a town, was a city. People lived there, people worked there. Now, of course, there's so much more to it. There's so much more power. The Christmas mystery that happened there makes it so much more special. But these other cities too, Jerusalem, I lived there for 6 months. Nazareth is a big town now. And so I say this because it's important for us to remember that our faith is based on these real places and these real events that actually happened in history. These are real things that happened. These are real places where they happened. Sometimes perhaps the difficulty can be that when we live so far from them, not only in terms of distance, but also in terms of time, there can perhaps be a detachment from the reality of them. And in the sense that we celebrate them and we think of these holy places and these holy events, but they can perhaps become a little bit detached from our real experiences now, our real world experiences, where we have this separation between what we celebrate perhaps in the church, what we celebrate in our hearts and our spiritual lives, but there's a detachment from the living of that in the world. So it's always important to remember and to keep that connection between the real events and the way we live them. But also these real events, what we do when we celebrate them is also something interesting. When we celebrate these sacred events, particularly when we celebrate them in the church, in our Mass and in our liturgical feasts and our sacred rituals, what we're doing is more than just remembering past events. Because we do that all the time. As human beings, we all have our histories, and so we remember events from the past, and we think of past historical events in the world. But the religious events, and when we celebrate them, we do something much different and much more than just remember a past event. When we celebrate them liturgically, when we celebrate them, as I said, in the Mass, what we're trying to do is make these past events present to us now, as though we are experiencing them now, as though they were present to us now. So what we try and do at Christmas is we try and really accompany the shepherds to Bethlehem and experience Christmas now. Or today, we're going with Our Lady and St. Joseph and the child Jesus to Jerusalem and experiencing those events of the Holy Family now. So that those events, those sacred events that happened way back then, are present to us now. So again, we're not just remembering past events and leaving them in the past, we're trying to live them in a certain way that makes them present to us now and gives us all of the strength and comfort that God meant to bring through these events so that we can experience them now. But we also remember that we're experiencing them now in 2021, in our own particular experiences now. So those Bethlehem events, those Jerusalem events have a particular meaning to us now, our own world situation now, our own particular family situations now. We have our challenges, our difficulties, our needs now. They had their own needs 2,000 years ago. We have our own needs now. But the same events are giving us comfort and strength. And I think that is very important to remember again, to have those sacred events present to us now. They can give us a great strength, I think. Christmas is a time that, as we all know, it's very joyful, very happy, very, great celebrations. But I'm always aware that Christmas is also a time that can be very difficult for many people. When you're going through, when life is difficult and you're suffering or sick or in pain or lonely, Christmas can be that much more difficult because it's just a sharp reminder of how difficult the rest of the year is. There's nothing worse than being alone or in pain on Christmas because the pain somehow is made even more sharp because of that. So I think that's especially why we need those events to be present to us now. I go back to that priest in Jerusalem who got up to go to Bethlehem. He has a fascinating story. He's a Vietnamese priest, and in the 1980s, he actually spent 9 years in a communist prison in Vietnam, because at that time the Catholic Church in Vietnam was persecuted. So he was in prison and in a labor camp for all of these years. Rarely would he speak about it to us, but once in a while he would. But ultimately what gave him the strength to keep going was his faith. They somehow could live their faith in a bit of a secret way, even sometimes celebrate Mass in the prison in those dark situations. And so what happened was, because he was living his faith, it's not that he was remembering these past events that somehow gave him a strength, but through his faith, those past events were present to him right there in the prison. It was as though Jesus was born for them in the darkness of the prison. It was as though Our Lady and St. Joseph were there with them to give them a strength. It doesn't happen automatically. We need to bring our faith, and we need to open our hearts and open our eyes to these mysteries, and in that way bring those events into our lives. But when we can do that, they can give us a great strength and a great comfort when we're going through difficult and hard things. So today, perhaps as we celebrate again this second day of Christmas, which this year is the Feast of the Holy Family, we think especially of the family and what the Christmas mystery can give for the family. Family is a beautiful, beautiful thing, but not always, in fact, never easy. There's always challenges, always difficulties, sometimes more than others. And so we really need the grace and the strength of God that comes to us through the Holy Family. And so may Jesus, Mary, and Joseph be present to us now as they were present then, and give great blessing to all of our families, to all of your families, all of the families in this world, especially nowadays going through the pandemic. In whatever way everything is challenging and difficult, may the Holy Family of Nazareth give us the comfort and the strength that we need, and that ultimately the Christmas mystery is meant to bring.